The Realty Debate with Manisha Natarajan, powered by Reliance Home Finance.
It's that time of the year when every industry and sector gets hopeful of a bag full of goodies from the finance minister. And for real estate, this year's union budget is even more critical for two reasons. One, the industry has hit an unexpected patch, or I should even say how unexpected, I don't know, but definitely a patch of poor sales and low buyer sentiments. And the end is nowhere in sight. Two, the big mission of housing for all continues to be a lofty one because where there are cheap homes, there are no takers, and very few developers really think it's viable to get into affordable housing. So our focus on the pre-budget realty debate is simple: to answer these two big questions. Can the union budget do anything to revive buyer sentiment? And can affordable housing become a reality? Let me welcome my panelists, JC Sharma, VC and MD, Sobha Limited. Mr. Sharma, thanks very much for joining us. Abhishek Lodha, Managing Director, Lodha Group. Abhishek, pleasure to have you finally on the property show in the Realty Debate and from the Mumbai studio. Also Sanjay Dutt, Executive Managing Director, South Asia, Cushman and Wakefield, India. Here with me in the Delhi studio, Rohit Raj Modi, Director, Ashiana Homes Private Limited and Vice President of CREDAI. Aditya Agarwal, Director, Aditya Builders and Developers for an Affordable Housing Perspective. And also Kalyan Chakrabarti, Managing Director, Rising Straits Capital, to give us what's happening on the financing front and how tough things are looking and what we need from the budget. All right, gentlemen, before I begin, I think I'm just going to divide the budget into a couple of areas. One is demands for 2016. What are these? These are the big ones. Now, the government has urged political parties to cooperate on an early passage of crucial legislation, including GST. But the big real estate sector demands are number one, robust and uniform definition of affordable housing. You also have another big demand from the industry, which is get a benefit under Section 80 IAB to 81A, or is it 80 IAB? It is 80 IAB to affordable housing. And then you have some more which are coming up, capital gains on affordable housing. Those should be also relooked at, and removal of tax anomalies. A number of anomalies are there. Income tax laws are inhibiting investments, CREDAI says, into the housing sector. So let's discuss all of this, and I will come to the consumer angle a little bit later. JC Sharma, what do you think the finance minister can announce? You know, in 2014, the budget had a lot of goodies, or at least one was really excited. 2015 was a little bit damp. What are you expecting this year from an industry perspective?
Manisha, good evening. See, from the industry's perspective, what we are looking at is that where Mr. Arun Jaitley had started from 2014 onwards, this is the time where he can take some bold calls and at least work out some simple solutions which this sector has been looking for. As you very rightly mentioned, prima facie what we are looking for as far as developers are concerned, that when we are going to develop an affordable kind of a housing with lots of infrastructure, can we get some benefit akin to an infrastructure company enjoys in 80 IA of the Income Tax Act. Similarly, when we are selling these products of less than 1,000 square feet or so built up area, can we have that 80 IB reintroduced once again?
So you're saying 80 IB is really critical, or giving some sort of status to affordable housing. Abhishek Lodha, is that critical, or do you think there's more that the government needs to do?
Our belief is that, one, there has to be recognition that there has been no major economy which has grown without housing making a significant contribution to it. And so really, it's as much as what the government can do for housing as it is that without housing, can you really have an economic growth story? And hence, housing has to be a sector which has to be focused on and helped. I don't think that necessarily tax incentives in the form of 80IB, etc., are something the government is looking forward to. If we even get a clear roadmap on the rationalization of overall corporate taxes to 25%, I think that'd be good enough, in my opinion, for the sector to work towards. But I think what's more important is if there is clarity on fiscal consolidation so that interest rates can moderate in the next 12 months. And overall, there is incentives on the consumer side so that the demand which is inherent and needed for the economy to progress ahead can once again come out and start buying. I think that would be what I would wish from the budget.
Okay, fair enough. So you've said ATIB, some tax incentives needed, but there's a lot more needed in terms of macroeconomic policies. Sanjay Dutt, you start with your industry wish list. And keep
The
it
industry
humor
wants
now
only
for
one
now.
thing. Industry wants only one thing, Manisha. They want capital.
All right.
They want
Okay.
capital for land. They want capital for construction. They want capital for investment in new opportunities, and they want it cheap. And I think the only way it can really happen is the government has to really focus on how to drive demand. So if you look at IT and IT-enabled services, they're doing extremely well. And that is reflected in the demand for office which has been going. So the industry is benefiting a lot. And I think it will have an impact in few years from now when this office demand will create job and it will create more demand for residential. But this is just one sector, Manisha. It's technology, IT-driven sector. Can the government not do some for banking, financial services, to trigger growth in manufacturing and industrial? These are, government has taken a lot of initiative, but they've never really done anything concrete to enable this actually happens. That's one piece. I think government has done a good job on selling India so well that the capital is coming to India. And this is private capital, sovereign capital. And as a result, you see NBFCs now launching products from 14% to 18%, which earlier was 18% to 24% and guaranteed return kind of deal. So I think this is good news. But real benefit will come only when jobs get created, demand gets created, and the developers will see the same kind of enthusiasm as they see in the office side today.
All right, so are we saying here that, Kalyan, come in here. So Sanjay said, look, money is coming in. And I also heard last week I did a discussion with Mr. N.K. Singh, and he said that, look, Make in India was so better received by foreigners than it was amongst Indians. There's a lot more skepticism that we see around us, and globally we are perceived to be in a much sweeter spot. So let's start with that big concern, which is capital. Do you think that currently the economic situation that you see, the numbers you see on GDP, on fiscal consolidation, the Moody's report which came out just yesterday, all of this will continue to keep capital flowing into the country, or do you think the finance minister needs to do more?
I definitely think the finance minister has a lot of scope to do a lot more to enable the capital to come. I think the capital is still playing a little coy as far as the foreign capital is concerned. The headline news as far as the economy is concerned is pretty good, no doubt about that. I think the glamour associated with India, the index has definitely gone up, but the translation of foreign capital coming into India has exactly not picked up the momentum that I would want it to pick up. It has been nearly 2 years or a year and a half since this government has come in, and while the headline keeps improving, the translation has not been as good.
Okay.
I see headwinds going to be persisting for a while till some basics are put in place. So I do see substantial tax anomalies with the way a foreign investor is treated between two different tax regimes. So there is probably a regulatory arbitrage, for example, just to pick between, let's say, an ECB where you are willing to give a 5% withholding tax irrespective of the tenor of the instrument. So even if it is a 5-year ECB, I get a 5% withholding tax for all 5 years. But under FPI route, I bring the same money, I get it for 1 year, and you keep extending by 1 year each. I as an investor need to make up my mind when I'm putting the money to play for a 3 to 5 year horizon or probably longer. Why can't we just make up our mind and give a proper withholding tax regime for 5 years? Just make it across all regulatory regimes a steady policy view. Why do we have this divergence of policy views where the capital is the same, the cloak that the capital wears tends to be same most often, but you tend to have different policies regulating, and then you are asking the investor to play between different regulatory regimes, think of cute structures, which to me is not a great way of trying to attract capital.
And also not going with the coinage of ease of doing business in India.
Exactly,
All right.
exactly.
Okay, Rohit Raj Modi, you heard everybody. I mean, we've talked about capital. We've heard Abhishek Lodha say, hey, just make housing a priority to kickstart the economy. Mr. Sharma saying, you're talking about affordable housing, but where is that incentive for developers to get into affordable housing. Prioritize these for us. I mean, look at the way the industry is. It's literally in ICU at many levels. I'm not saying everybody is in the ICU, but from a buying perspective, yes, demand has dried up. What can be done?
Sure. Manisha, I would clarify or speak on this on behalf of CREDAI. We have been harping with the government that this Make in India campaign, which is so dear to the government, housing sector is a truly make in India. It is truly make in India and make for India. It's a mother of all sectors, which leads to about 250 to 270 ancillary industries are supported just on housing. So as Abhishek said, that every developed economy, housing start is the most important indice which any fund manager or a banker or economist worth its name looks at every morning. That that's a bellwether of how good or bad is the economy doing. Government needs to recognize housing with that due importance and not look at it as an asset class or a speculative business only. Number one. You asked everyone that what is that singular demand. Industry
which can come through. I know single demand is approval processes, but that's not something he can tackle in the budget.
So from the Honorable Finance Minister, the singular expectation, the most important one, is actually on behalf of the consumer that please increase the interest exemption to 5 lakh rupees from 2 lakh, which is woefully short and completely out of sync. Also, the rebate which you get on that principle, that 1,50,000, that actually comes under, that already gets occupied by your HRA, your life insurance, and so many other things. So there is really no benefit. If you look at some of the developed nations, you look at USA, any interest paid is exempted. Any renovation spent on renovation is exempted. Any stamp duty, registration charges is exempted. Why do we have so many classifications? And also, you must be aware that this exemption is only valid if you get the possession within 3 years of time. Now, we know that 3 years is too short a time for deliver any large mass housing project in India, given the amount of external factors which are at play. So this time limit needs to go.
All right, so we've come to the buyer's perspective. I think Rohit has now put the ball firmly in the court of the buyers. So let me just recap all that Rohit has said. Some of the demands are the tax deduction limit on housing loan. The current limit, as we all know, is 2 lakhs. And this actually, Mr. Jaitley did increase from 1.5 to 2. But this is still insignificant given the ticket sizes in metro cities. The number 2 thing that everybody is looking at, and this one is critical, considering the fact that rarely across the country do you have large housing projects being delivered in 3 years. So on purchase into an under construction property, buyers can claim tax benefits of 2 lakh after possession only if the construction is completed within 3 years. The benefit actually reduces to 30,000 rupees if the builder delays construction beyond this and they pay high interest. So instead of allowing home buyers tax benefits post-possession, the union budget should make provisions that allows these from the time that they start paying interest on housing loans. So that's another really important one. Abhishek Lodha, I'll come back to you because you had raised this. I mean, how critical would these two be? And do you think, I think more importantly, you also spoke about fiscal consolidation. So tell me whether the finance minister really has room to play with any kind of tax exemptions in this budget.
No, I don't think the finance minister should get into further complicating the tax code or having more industry specific tax exemptions. Some of my fellow developers may not necessarily agree with that, but I think the overall reduction in corporate tax rates to 25%, which we outlined last year, that's the sort of right direction to proceed on. What we need is simplification and clarity, like some of the other panel members mentioned. In terms of the consumer side, I think it is necessary to generate demand. We all recognize the fact that the capital investment cycle from the private sector isn't going to come up quickly. The government is doing a little bit, can probably do more, and it will, be pumping a lot of money into the economy through the 7th Pay Commission, OROP, etc. and then to make sure that that money that goes into the hands of the consumer is channelized in the right sectors that have the necessary multiplier effect is very, very necessary. You take the same 1 lakh rupee which is in the hands of a consumer, and if you invest it in for example, him buying or spending money buying clothes or furniture, that's a different multiplier effect. If he spends it on housing or, for example, in some other heavy employment generating sector, then the multiplier effect is multifold. And the government has to clearly incentivize the consumer to spend the money where there is asset creation as well as employment creation.
How will you do
And
that,
I think
Abhishek, if it's not through taxes? Sorry, pardon me, I'm interrupting you again. But if it's not through these tax incentives that we spoke about, how does the government actually encourage people to invest in more houses or buy more houses?
So that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm saying is that instead of industry level or incentives to developers, the incentive has to be to the consumer. So as mentioned, maybe increasing the interest rebate to 5 lakhs or any such thing, maybe subventing interest for homes below 25 lakhs and maybe below 40 lakhs in some of the major metros. Whatever can be done to create demand for employment generating sectors. And I can tell you with confidence that for every rupee spent in the sector, real estate produces the highest amount of employment, and this is a factor which is ignored. In a country where employment is so chronically needed, the generation of demand for real estate will have such a cascading effect on the overall economy that it should be really the priority of the government to make sure that demand is created for real estate and consequently leads to benefits to other parts of the economy.
Okay, so the multiplier effect, I think the government in India tends to just completely not consider housing, though the US government ensures that housing is the first sector which is looked into if they do want to revive the economy. This is something which I think is a very, very valid grouse of the industry. Aditya Agarwal, come in here. From an affordable housing perspective, do you think some amount of tax exemptions can actually even increase affordable housing demand?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with this point. At present, if you see the tax structure in the country, about 30 to 32% of the amount of the affordable house is going in taxes as sales tax, registration tax, excise, VAT, both state and center. If the GST bill that is proposed to be passed by the government, if that is done, say probably in this session, it can drastically reduce the taxation burden of on the house from the buyer's perspective.
All right, so stay tuned. We're going to come back and we are going to look at GST particularly. Of course, the April 1st deadline is going to be missed now. We all know that. But within the budget, what can the government do on two things that the panelists have raised? One is eliminating multiple taxation on property purchase, which are some of the taxes which should go. And of course, for GST itself, as a path to GST, is there some alignment on taxes this budget can do, specifically with real estate and larger for the economy? Stay with us. You're watching the budget special or pre-budget special on the Realty Debate.